Welcome to Across the Aisle. I am here today with Steuart Pittman, the county executive from Arundel County and the chairman of the Maryland Democratic Party, someone I've known for many years. And Steuart, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for coming here and joining us on Across the Aisle. It's an honor to have you here. What we've been doing is just, this is our 8th or 9th show at this point in time, and we are just trying to talk about policies and trying to get into specifics and doing it from all angles of the political spectrum without the kind of the venom and vitriol that we see, particularly in podcasts, but all over politics. So I just want to say thank you for joining us.
Thank you for doing this and inviting me too. Been looking forward to it.
All right. Yeah. So for those who don't know you, tell us about Steuart Pittman, your career. You're now the county executive and the chair of the party. How did you get to these positions? And kind of give us a little bit about you.
Yeah, probably like nobody else. Never was in my plan. I went to the University of Chicago and I came out of school and became a thing called a community organizer for the infamous Acorn.
Okay.
Worked community organizing in neighborhoods of Chicago for a couple of years, then went to Des Moines, Iowa, and ran that office and organized neighborhoods there. And came back home when I had a child, which is Maryland. And couldn't find a job at first. Felt, well, maybe I'll have to be a lawyer or something. That's my dad was a lawyer. Managed to get a job with the National Low Income Housing Coalition for a couple of years, working on housing issues, advocacy. Then went back to Acorn as director of national campaigns, fighting for investment, Community Reinvestment Act in housing and community redevelopment work. And then said, all right, the world's not changing fast enough for me. There's good people who can do this work. And then I started making my living training horses on family farm where I grew up and farming and growing hay, and did that for over 20 years. Started a nonprofit called Retired Racehorse Project, was president of the Maryland Horse Council, kind of got involved in political things, the Salt Conservation District at the local level. And then I ran for county executive, and nobody thought I had a shot. They couldn't find a Democrat to run because the incumbent had won by 22 points. The Republican incumbent had won by 22. Steve Shue.
Steve Shue.
Yeah, and he had won by a lot against a pretty experienced Democrat. And this was 2018, and I thought about running for county council. Donald Trump had been elected in 2016, and during 2017, my own thoughts about government had changed a little. I used to think being in office was selling out as a community organizer. You build leaders, you grow power by organizing, but you're not supposed to be the man at the top or the woman at that top. You just don't. That's never thought I would do that. But after that election, it kind of shook me up a little bit that a guy like Donald Trump, clearly an outsider, would become president and sort of dismantle institutions and things that I valued, even though I was a little bit of a disruptor myself, or maybe a lot of a disruptor. Acorn marching. Yeah. So
what is it, for those who don't know? I mean, I know what it is, but what is Acorn? Just a kind of a.
Well, the acronym is Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, but the organizing, we were in 27 cities at the point where I was doing it, it's
environmental causes.
It's all low and moderate income neighborhoods, based on it came out of the National Welfare Rights Organization originally. And then some people went to Arkansas and they wanted to do multiracial organization in Arkansas of low and moderate income people. And it's like union organizing, but it's based in neighborhoods. So
Got it.
Really, you sign people up, you work on local issues and develop. So
it's kind of like issues all over the map. It's not like one specific
right. There was
issue, union, environmental.
From trying to get more police protection to, doing something about abandoned homes in neighborhoods where there are a lot of abandoned homes, to try to make government work for the communities that had felt like they've been left behind.
Got it.
And then a lot of work to get investment into those neighborhoods from the banking industry and against redlining of banks and insurance companies and things like that. So I always felt like I might come back to full circle to social justice issues in some way. Not thinking it would be running for office, but when I decided that I would run for county council in my red district, Southern Anne Arundel County, rural, I was on the board of Farm Bureau. I'm a farm boy from South County. Somebody came to me, Sarah Elfreth, actually, Congresswoman now. She was running for state senate at the time. And she said, have you thought about running for county executive? We don't have a candidate. and the numbers look better in terms of partisan if you were running as a Democrat. And I thought about that for a couple of months and talked to people about the coalition that could be built, and thought, this actually could be winnable in this political environment. And so South County South County farm boy, tree hugger, kind of came in complaining about overdevelopment, about development without a plan in the wrong places, and it really kind of resonated and surprised people. We won by almost 5 points, 4.7, and then we came back 4 years later and almost doubled that margin.
Okay.
And I'm term limited, so I'll be done December 7th.
Okay.
And
I'm sure your family's excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, it's been a good run, but it's, there's a, yeah.
So you've become chairman of the Democratic Party, and we're going to talk a lot about kind of more state national type issues, because I really am interested, and we're going to have, as we talked about beforehand, like the chairman of the Republican Party, I come in here and answer questions also, because but so you became chairman, what, 2 years ago or so?
Yeah, it was just over a year ago. It was July 1st of last year.
Okay, so it's been about a year. What went into that decision, just from a purchase real quickly? Like, how did that come about? Because usually you don't have, sitting political figures as the chairs. You've had the Richard Parsons, or I guess Harry Hughes at one point in time. Like, how was it that enticed you to do that, and how is that going?
Ken Allman was the chair, and there you run for the position. The state central committee from all the counties gets together and they elect their chair. Ken Allman had run and became chair at the beginning of Governor Moore's administration. That's when the terms, they go by the gubernatorial. And he needed to step down for business reasons and other reasons. I had done I'd done a fundraiser for the party, and they looked at me as somebody who could, understood purple districts, and he talked to the governor, and they kind of hatched this idea that I should run, and approached me. And at first I was a little shocked, because I didn't think you could do both at the same time. And I'm also not a party person. I even thought about running as an independent, and then figured you couldn't really. I've just never been, back in my Acorn days, we had an effort to try to start a third party. So I'm not a party person. I don't think that way. But I thought about it, and the conclusion I came to was that, in the political moment that we're in, where there's a pretty broad consensus in the electorate that we need change of some kind or another, left, right, wherever it goes. But that things are not moving in the right direction for the average working person. And my own view is that the administration of Washington is losing support fast among people who voted for it, and working people. And I'm particularly interested in rural people, having grown up in a rural area. I think are rethinking their political affiliations, and a lot of them are just checking out. And so I thought about, is a political party, is the Democratic Party, or any party for that matter, but is the Democratic Party a vehicle for the kind of progress that I feel like we need to make? And I thought, it is exactly the organization that should be that and could be that. And in my old community organizing skills, I felt like were exactly what the party needed. And so I made the conclusion that this is where, this was a calling this is where I was needed right now. And as far as being the two at once, the county attorney said, as long as you're not getting paid by the party, it's good. You can do anything you want. And we had one more budget left to do. And I felt like then things would be winding down. So we've done that last budget, and that frees up some time. And there's an extraordinarily good staff at the party. Karen Darks is the executive director, and a staff of about 7, 8 people. It grows a little bit during election time. And they do the day-to-day operations.
Got it. So let me I want to dig a little bit about the party stuff, because I've always thought about you as kind of a moderate, independent voice, very independent voice. You kind of, whatever the issue is, very policy oriented. Your reputation is very policy oriented. And let me just set this up. I am a lifelong Democrat. Mm-hmm. I was the president of Young Democrats of Maryland. I spoke at the Democratic National Convention. I worked for Bill Clinton. on his reelection campaign, which is how I got to speak at the convention in the first place, for Young Dems. I was a delegate, a senator, all in the Democratic Party. Especially after this last week and some of the candidates that have been elected, I don't know what the Democratic Party stands for right now. And I guess as the chairman of the party, I guess I'm looking for somebody to tell me what my party what the party that I belong to and worked with for so many years stands for. Because just to set it up, like some of these candidates that have been elected, I would never be in. I mean, I agree with James Carville. Like when James Carville said that he and Hassan Piker are not in the same party, and if that guy's in, he's out. I'm teetering right now because, at least from what I'm looking at, I'm concerned. More than concerned. And as a Jew, I'm really concerned. So look, I guess in general, like, what is our party, what does the Democratic Party stand for that would say to me, okay, you can be comfortable with this?
I had a little bit of the same question, but more importantly, a lot of people were asking that question. What does the Democratic Party stand for? And so the first thing that we did, this was fall of last year, was we called it the Talk Back Tour. We went to all 24 Maryland counties and we said, tell us what you want in the Democratic Party. Tell us how you think it could or should grow. And so the first thing was they said is define the party. That was one of the big demands that people were saying on that tour. I realized that on the Maryland Democratic Party website, there is not a platform, and there was nothing about issues. There was no description of what we stood for or stood against. And the DNC has a platform they do every 4 years. That's very detailed. And some state parties have very detailed platforms, and they do them at conventions and things. In Maryland, we've not done that. And I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. I'm just saying that it's not been done. So what we did after that tour was, is it okay if I go through?
Sure.
Because they're quite simple. One is justice, liberty and justice for all. You've heard that before, Pledge of Allegiance, and broadly defined liberty and justice for all. 2 is a fair and thriving economy. And what I wrote after that is growing our economy and the businesses that drive it while protecting nature and leaving no one behind.
Okay.
Rule of law. Pretty universal stuff. The rule of law with justice applied not only to our people, but also to our leaders. Pretty straightforward. Voting rights. Protecting the right of every American to vote and to have that vote counted. Affordability. Access to affordable education, healthcare, utilities, food, and housing for all people. I'm not saying giving it away, but affordable, like doable in the economy that we have.
Okay.
Government efficiency. And I'm really, really big on this. And it's a bipartisan issue because everybody says they want to make government more efficient. Government efficiency and the removal of regulations that have no public benefit. Bipartisan stuff. Fiscal discipline and transparency when investing the people's money. And as a county executive, I think that was one of the things, like improving our bond ratings and growing our rainy day fund were things that people really, really supported. And I campaigned for re-election on that. And I feel like it's, when I look back through history, I actually do believe that, at least at the presidential level, that debt has grown during both, but particularly Republican administrations. And I would say, fiscal discipline has been lacking. Fair taxes, restore taxes on wealth and protect working families. That's a long American tradition, that started after the Civil War when they created the income tax. And then rebuilding the middle class, ending the transfer of American wealth from the pockets of working people to the portfolios of billionaires. Now, that might sound like the populist left-wing stuff that I don't know, that some people don't like. It is, in my view, just a statistical fact that over the last 50 years, that wealth has moved to the top of the income scale, some $50 billion. And when you look at that statistically, and then you look at the problems we have in our society, that wealth transfer is something that we have to figure out why it happened and how to get how to build the middle class so that we don't have such huge disparities, which in my view are one of the things that threatens our societies more than anything.
Okay, so that's
the party in my view.
Let me grab that because I'm going to have some.
Okay,
let me take it and ask some specific. So let me start with one, and you and I talked off air about this, and this is one that I asked to everybody because I'm intrigued by this idea. voting rights.
Right.
And I understand, all the things that are going on in the Supreme Court and so forth, and redistricting, which we'll talk about that, but I find horrifying what we've done, but also what every other state. I understand what we've done, but this is like become a race to the bottom in terms of voting rights. But I want to talk about something a little bit more kind of positive and something that can be done, because I'm not 100% sure what can be done about redistricting at this point in time, because we are so far off the rails.
Well, I know exactly what can be done about redistricting, and it has been
it's got to be federal, right? I mean, it has to be a national law.
I mean, Democrats have introduced and voted in favor of consistently over and over and over again nonpartisan redistricting commissions in every state. And unfortunately, Republicans have blocked it every time so far.
Can I push back for a second? In Maryland, Larry did that.
Well,
Governor Hogan proposed that and pushed back.
Right, exactly. So if you do it state by state, then if you care about national issues,
it's got to be
you're
national.
saying, okay, you're tying your hands behind your back and you're letting everybody else,
right,
where they have a majority, have a supermajority.
I get it.
Yeah,
that's why it's such a vexing problem, because
that's why it has to have a national solution.
Has to have a national solution.
Yeah.
But what doesn't need a national solution is something that, because the fastest growing voter is the independent voters, the unaffiliated voter, by far, all across the country and here in Maryland. And yet they are completely shut out of really the entire process in many districts and in both congressional and state and so forth. And in judicial elections, which are supposed to be nonpartisan, they are often shut out completely. I feel like the parties, one thing they should be able to get together on is to say that every citizen of the state and the country has a right to vote.
In the primaries.
In everything. Because what's happening is, and we all know, is that increasingly there's a smaller and smaller number of people who are putting the candidates forward from the parties to get to the general. So you're getting fringier left-wing and right-wing candidates. And so the general public and these independents, if you're a Democrat and you decide not to vote, I guess that's on you in the primary, or a Republican for that matter. But the independents are shut out. And so they're sitting there waiting for these two candidates to come forward, and they dislike both of them because none of them, increasingly are speaking to them in the middle of, independents tend to be more moderate and centrist voters, and they're not speaking to them.
Yeah.
Some have suggested, Cheryl Kagan suggests, well, we should let them vote in our primary. And I said, well, that's better than, I'm just setting this up, and I want to get your read on it.
Yeah.
I said, that's nice, but you're forcing somebody to associate with a private organization in order to avail themselves of their right. Why not just let them, like a school board election or many judicial elections, not in this country, not in this state, but to just vote, to come in and everybody votes, and the top one, and the top two, the top three, the top four, whatever, move on to the general, whatever their party of the candidate. What do you think?
Well, so I got two minds.
Not to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay, because I got two minds about this. I also don't like the fact that we have a two-party system that is, you call it a private organization, and in some ways it is, but it is the way our democracy is structured. And so it is in state law, it is in federal law, the parties, and that's why it's so hard to run as an independent, and it's so hard to run a third party. And other countries have a ton of parties and these parliamentary systems, that they got their problems too.
Sure.
And then some states allow the independents to vote in their primaries, and some states don't. And as party chair, hanging out with the longtime party folks, I get it when they say, if somebody's going to represent the Democratic Party and carry that name, you don't want it to be just anybody. You want it to be a Democrat elected by Democrats. And then on the other hand, the people who say, but you'll have a better outcome if independents are allowed to pick maybe pick a party right before the election and only vote in one of the primaries, or do you allow them to vote in both of the primaries, or do you even have primaries the way they have them now? I think all of that. I love ranked choice voting because that also moderates things, and it gets the candidates actually to try to talk to each other and maybe be a little less negative towards each other, because you're trying to get their supporters as well as your supporters. So there's certainly not a consensus in Maryland to move forward. I know the governor said positive things about opening up the primaries. I kind of see it both ways. I think the real problem is that people are checked out and they don't like either party. or they don't like politics at all, so they don't really want to affiliate. And it's the job of the parties to try to bring people in. And I don't think, that either party has done a great job of doing that. In Maryland right now, I think particularly the Republican Party is having trouble. I mean, the turnout in the primary this time, so the primaries, there was a decline over 4 years ago. Maybe it's because there wasn't a really competitive governor's race. There wasn't on the Democrat. There was a very competitive governor's race, top of the ticket on the Republican side.
Yeah.
But Republican turnout was down almost 9%. Democratic turnout was down 1.5%.
Not the most inspiring candidates I've seen in the Republican primary.
Well, that's an opinion. Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Yeah, right,
I mean,
right.
I try to see it from both sides, and those are not the most inspiring candidates I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Maryland. I'm not saying this to sort of belittle or to brag, but the Maryland Republican Party has had some real problems. The last chair described it as a circular firing squad. Now the turnout is so low that it's there's a question about its viability. But if the parties become so unpopular or so divided that they create new parties, I think that that happens through history. Or parties change what they do. I mean, it used to be the Republican Party was the party of anti-racism and the party of creating economic opportunity. It was very different from today's Republican Party. Someone would even say they switched. But I think there are bound to be changes in the future in the party structure.
So I guess I'll send you some stuff on. I mean, I'm fascinated by what I think, as I told you, what Alaska is doing, which is they essentially have said, look, we're going to do both. We're going to do open primaries. We're letting every candidate, first of all, has to run. I always hated the fact that I could run in an election and somebody could just throw their name in as a different party because they had a different, the Green Party person didn't have to do anything. I had to spend a fortune on my campaign and I'm doing all these things. Then they could just run in the general. I'm like, well, why is that? And for the person who I beat in the primary, why can't they just do it too? And then, I always thought about, I studied.
Or you lose a primary and then you run as an independent.
Right. And then they had to create loser laws to avoid that. And it's just like, the parties have given themselves, not you, because this is historically, as you said, it's in law that these parties have become kind of enshrined in state and federal law. But like the founders they weren't against that. And, of course it's enshrined in law because they were the ones who were in power. And so they wanted to keep it. And so there's an interesting lawsuit that's making its way through the courts right now. It's in the Court of Special Appeal, the Appellate Court of Maryland, that Boyd Rutherford has filed on behalf of a True Vote or one of these organizations that says that on behalf of independent voters to open up the primary, saying essentially the states are giving, not just Maryland, but this is a Maryland case, are giving money for these primaries. You can't disenfranchise people if you're going to pay for it. Like you should not enshrine and give money and so forth. I'll be fascinated to see how it goes. I think the process is better when everybody participates, when everybody's allowed to participate. You get more views, more, and then you can make your case to more people.
One of the things about the process that I think frustrates a lot of people is the sense that it's driven by big money and that the big money is coming from a very small number of donors. And more and more and more, that seems to be the case with Citizens United and the unlimited dark money that you can put into elections. And so I mean, I had somebody at one of these town halls a young person say, why should I support the Democratic Party? You guys are funded by the same people as the Republican Party. Or that, the so-called oligarchs that are all, writing checks to Trump and his C4s and things. When Trump's gone, they're going to be looking for the next bright, shiny object to support and control. And there's a sense that is controlling the politics. And
isn't that though? I don't want to push back on that too hard, but like, isn't that like a little bit of like? I never in all my races, people would fundraise, they do this, that, or the other thing. Like, first of all, there's money on both sides because of Citizens United. Like that's not a Trump thing. That's a both sidesism thing. But isn't it a little bit of a function that the Bernie Sanders of the world, who are as wealthy can be, flying around on jets, like is screaming about oligarchs and telling everybody how everybody's corrupt. Everybody, not just Donald Trump, like everybody's corrupt. Anybody that's outside of his worldview is corrupt and bought and sold and all the rest. And like the more you say that, it just kind of, at some point in time, people start believing it.
There is that dynamic, and I can see how people would be frustrated by that if a candidate is all they talk about is everybody else is corrupt.
Right.
However, if what they're saying is that our politics would be better if it were funded by the people, small donors, or in some cases, I mean, we have now counties that do this public finance option where you can say, okay, I'm not going to take anything over $250. And in return, I get a match for my small donations.
Like from taxpayer money,
Larry
like
Hogan
from the
won
budget.
like that the
Right.
first time
Larry
in
Hogan did it. Right.
And
Baltimore
then
County has that now, I
Baltimore
think.
and Arundel just started for the first time. Montgomery has it. Howard has it. It's a growing thing. It's growing around the country. And it's a way to level the playing field. And I think it builds a little bit of trust that, the candidate, when you look at the donors, it's not all coming from a couple sources or even, 10 or 20 sources.
Right.
It's at the local level. It's been the real estate industry is major investors in local races. They know who makes zoning decisions. They know who makes the permitting decisions, and they invest. And it's something that makes people distrust politics and want to check out, in my view. Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a question.
No easy answers on it.
No easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
Citizens
not all
United
Democrats agree. I mean, the
Citizens United
Democratic
is a
Party is
problem.
really looking hard at reform at the national level of this for its own primaries to get big money out of politics, and consistently wants to end the Citizens United with the dark money thing. Some want to go further, some don't. Yeah.
It's an issue. I mean, I had a very close friend who just won for state's attorney in Baltimore County, and Scott Schellenberger is a good friend of mine also. But the woman who beat him was my chief of staff in Annapolis, Sarah David. She's an incredible person. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet her. I mean, she's going to be a great state's attorney. She's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Yeah.
She had, without her permission, knowledge, or anything else, $1 million spent on her behalf by an outside force.
Right.
She's not allowed to be in touch with them. She didn't like what they were doing. She didn't like their tactics.
Yeah.
They were attacking the hell out of Scott Schellenberger, and that's not how she was running her race.
Right.
On election day, I remember standing with her, and a couple people came up yelling at her about what she had been doing when it wasn't her.
Right.
It's really a problem. I mean, like,
Yeah.
her tactics were positive. Like, she is a incredibly positive woman, and she was talking about what she wanted to do for the future and all the rest. And these folks came in, it was tied to George Soros, and they hated Scott for whatever reasons. They were very against him and just beat the living daylights out of him. Much of it very untrue and unfair criticisms, and she hated all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a problem. And I don't know how you deal with it. I don't know how you get, quote, big money out of politics when
I think
things like that happen.
That happens more often, however, whoever is funding the candidate, they're not allowed to coordinate by law, although that's likely to change, we're told, because there's lawsuits against it. And the Supreme Court is going to, potentially change that. But
I didn't know that.
There's a lot of people unhappy that they can't coordinate, which is taking the whole thing even further and making it worse in some ways. But but generally, when a institution decides that they're going to support a candidate, there are relationships and support. They support them because they want them, and there's usually a relationship there. All
right. So let me switch topics for a second. I mean, there's so much to go through here. I'd love to get in. I wish we had hours to do this on justice and so forth, because criminal justice was kind of where I used to legislate, and civil justice over. I'd love to do this with you. Maybe we'll do this over a beer sometime. I do want to ask, as the chair of the Democratic Party, though, back to kind of my original question about some of these candidates. I've written a little bit, and I've gotten some flack from some of my Democratic friends about how hard I've been and harsh I've been on some of these candidates, and I push back on it. I want to get. I am old. Let me set it up like this. I'm old enough, sadly, to remember. I'm dating myself here, but when David Duke was the nominee first, I can't remember if it was first for governor and then Senate, but I remember the Senate candidacy more than the gubernatorial. I mean, he was a KKK grandmaster,
right?
A horrifyingly bad person. I mean, just as bad of a person as you could possibly ask for.
Anti-Semitic,
everything,
anti-immigrant,
awful.
Everything.
I mean, just a horrible human being.
Racist.
On every.
Okay.
But he won the nomination.
Okay.
He was the Republican nominee for the United States Senate. I can't remember, in 80 something or another. For the U.S. Senate, and he was running against a Democrat. And George Bush Sr. was the president at the time, and Bob Dole and all those guys. And they endorsed the Democrat because even though it was a number, they said what you and I say, what lots of people say, which is this is not a good human being. Like, I don't care if he's got an R next to his name, a D next to his name, or purple, green, red, blue, whatever. Like, this is not who we are. Yeah. And so they endorsed the Democrat, and the Democrat won in a state that a Republican could have picked up a seat. Right. Fast forward till today, and first there was Graham Plattner, who comes out with a Nazi tattoo on his chest. I mean, in any other time, in any other place, like, everybody would condemn that person and say, that's not who we are. And then the sexting and the Reddit comments and the racism and the homophobia. I mean, it was just like one thing after the next. And yet he was the candidate and everybody stuck with him. And with all due respect, in Maryland, Chris Van Hollen was his biggest cheerleader. And I found it despicable. I mean, the Nazi tattoo, I'm Jewish, but I don't have to be Jewish to know that being a Nazi is a bad thing. And yet the party stuck with him and stuck with him and stuck with him. Even when there was assault allegations by a woman, credible, they attacked the woman because she was a Republican. It was only when the Democratic woman came forward to say that there was assault, sexual assault, that finally people said, no, this is not our guy. That's one. Example number two is this guy from Michigan. And I got asked last night, I was at a baseball game, and a friend of mine, a very, very left-wing guy, said, well, what would you do? I'm disgusted by this guy, El Said, as disgusted as you are, but Donald Trump. I'm like, I don't care. Like, give money to the guy. I told him, I'm like, give money to the guy in Michigan, the Mike Rogers, and give money to Tallarico down in Texas. How about a swap? You get Tallarico, who's going against a person who is fatally flawed character-wise, and give money to Mike Rogers because he's going against El Said, who is fatally flawed character-wise. Let's have a swap. That way we don't talk about D's and R's. Yeah. I guess my general question is, you have a rabid anti-Semite in Michigan. I don't care what he's trying to do at this point in time. He is as bad as they get, as dangerous, in my opinion, as David Duke. He is David Duke on the lakes of Michigan, on the Great Lakes. And you have Graham Plattner, who everybody's stuck with. What is the threshold for a party in this day and age to say, you know what, I get it. You know, we don't like this and this, or Trump, or this, that, or the other thing, but this is not who we are.
So in all of those examples, I think you saw the party not the one acting, but elected leaders acting, whether they were acting in support or opposition. And because the party goes by its own bylaws. And so we have a code of conduct that we've added in Maryland that goes for central committee members beyond what our bylaws did, so that when there are situations where a central committee has a member that they think has been acting in a way that is contrary to their interests, they have a mechanism that they can go through to be able to remove somebody. The way it works with candidates is that the voters are the ones who make those decisions, and the party sort of sticks by that. But electeds within the party are the ones who turn the tide. And so it's been frustrating for me as party chair to sort of realize how little the party itself is the lead on an issue. We don't even lobby our members in the General Assembly on issues.
Really?
And people would come up at the town halls all the time and say, well, we want the party to, punish so-and-so for their vote on such and such. And I have to say, well, generally we don't attack the people, the Democratic Party's elected representatives in the Maryland General Assembly. But y'all should mobilize, y'all should organize, y'all should advocate for whatever your issues are and engage. But the party exists to elect people and to build the infrastructure to make democracy work, which is precinct leaders. And these folks in every jurisdiction that have the good list of who the voters are and how to contact them and have the knowledge and the capacity to be able to function in an election, so that then candidates will then rely on the party for support. And then you do these coordinated campaigns. I mean, that's really the meat of the party's work. And I can see why we, sort of are careful about commenting on issues or engaging too much on issues, because our members, our elected leaders, don't always agree with each other. I mean, so
So, but they taking it back
And
to
we're
the,
supposed to be Big Ten. We're supposed to be a
I know.
place and
I
to
get
grow and to bring people in.
that's
Yeah.
what I was told yesterday.
Yeah.
But I said, does the tent include everybody though? Right? Like if David Duke, because he's still alive, I think. I mean, I have no idea. I haven't followed him since he got.
Well, I mean,
if
there's
he became a Democrat,
that's why there's a platform, and you can say, okay, well, this person is like directly 180% from what the values of the party are. And
so what then? And I
then?
said that to Johnny O, and he's like, I don't know. I asked him, I said, you have somebody who's coming into Congress right now from, I think, New Jersey, who said that, I mean, I know people who were killed in the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm old enough to remember these things. Like some of these young people on TikTok, they don't know what happened. They don't know the horror of what was going on. And quite frankly, like to be okay putting a vote down for somebody because she calls herself a Democrat who says that we deserved what we got on 9/11, or El Said palling around with Hassan Pike. It's so, I know that they're allowed to.
You want, and if it's stupid enough, the system is supposed to chew them up and spit them out.
But it's not doing it now. That's the problem. I know they're allowed to. They're allowed to be as bigoted as they want, just like David Duke was allowed to be a bigot. Nobody said he wasn't allowed to say it.
Well, there are probably other members of Congress that you think shouldn't be there, right?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. But like, I'm struggling. I guess I was excited to talk to you because I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, I remember you talked at the convention. Like I had a primetime speech to help nominate Bill Clinton. I mean, I was a tiny one. We were talking about, I drove around the country in a bus instead of when I was in law school. I drove around with a bunch of young Democrats registering people to vote. I played softball with David Bonnier in Michigan and, did things with New Citizens in San Diego. I mean, Joe, the entire summer was driving around the country doing things for the Democratic Party. And right now I am teetering on the brink of saying, this is not me anymore. Not because of Westmore. I like Westmore. Like I'm not because of Bill Ferguson. I think he's great. There are lots of great Democrats, especially here in Maryland. But I'm looking I'm looking in New York at the mayor of New York and my good friend, Jamie Raskin, who I sat next to for 10 years on the floor of the Senate, putting his arms around somebody who is, I'm sorry, but he's not just anti-Netanyahu. He's anti-Jewish. He can be as flowery and smiley as he wants. And the same thing with the guy in Michigan. And I am like, I had Alan Kittleman in here who decided to be an independent because he just couldn't stand MAGA anymore. And he's like, how about you? How are you dealing with Mamdani? And I'm like, I'm trying to fight against it, but it feels like that's not where my party's going. And I'm not sure what to do with it right now because AOC, who, if you believe polls, and I have a hard time believing this poll, but if you believe polls, some significant percentage of the voting of the Democrats think she should be the president of the United States. Yesterday said, I'm a member. I've given money to AIPAC. I think they're great. I'm an American. I give to AIPAC. I give to environmental groups. I give to teachers. These are things I care about. I care about the state of Israel. I care about peace too. I don't want there to be war. She said yesterday that, she was so excited about how AIPAC we don't belong in the Democratic Party. That's the potential standard bearer, or one of them, for the Democratic Party, who just basically said Jews who care about Israel, like me, aren't welcome in the Democratic Party. Yeah. I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah. No,
I'm looking for you to tell me what to do.
I can see how, as a donor to AIPAC, that would be a slap across the face, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of probably conflicting views about what AIPAC stands for, just like there's conflicting views about what the NRA stands for, and other organizations that are very visible, very deep pockets, very active, and foreign policy. I got involved as a young person in U.S. involvement in Latin America. My sister was in Argentina. There'd been a military government, and she was there when the military stepped down. And she met a guy who was being released after 6 years in prison and ended up marrying him. He was a labor organizer. That was a crime, I guess, at the time. And there's things in El Salvador, Nicaragua. We were all marching in Washington. I was part of all of that. So what the U.S. was doing, in my view, hurting the people of other countries in Latin America in particular, where they tried to have democratic movements and then and then the sort of the copper companies in Chile and the banana companies in Central America were going to the government, the CIA. I mean, there's plenty, and saying, no, we need to overthrow the government that was just elected there so that we can keep our economic interests, and then doing it. That kind of stuff was what motivated me back then. And I think, I do think that there are people who are motivated, young people especially, who are motivated by, images of what's going on in Gaza with Palestinian young people. And they're drawing conclusions that maybe you and I don't agree with, but they're drawing conclusions based on, the information that they have. And in a sense that Netanyahu is sort of like they're Donald Trump and they hate Donald Trump, the people I'm talking about, at least the Democrats, and a sense that Israeli foreign policy is Netanyahu foreign policy. And then there are people who are saying, but that so quickly turns into you're anti-Israel. Just like when people hate Trump from other countries, some people would say, well, then you're anti-American. And so it really depends, I think, a lot on your perspective and what information that you have as to whether or not that becomes anti-Israel or even further anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish. And I think, this guy, I don't know the guy in Michigan that just won the primary. I think I listened to one debate between the two of them. He claims that he is not anti-Semitic. He claims that he is not anti-Israel.
David Duke said he wasn't racist. I mean, nobody thinks that.
And there were obviously people who supported David Duke, or he wouldn't have won that, nomination.
Right.
So, but the American political system has had these kinds of conflicts like throughout our history. And the good news to me is that it has managed, our institutions, our system, our democracy has managed to get through them. And so far, in most cases, come out better off, more freedom, more inclusive, even more economic prosperity for most of the time. And so that's why, for the Democratic Party, I see it as a part of that, as a part of American democracy. And that if it's healthy and it's thriving and people are engaging in it fully, that then we end up ultimately, hopefully, fingers crossed, coming out in a place where the fewer people are harmed, more people benefit, and peace and prosperity across the land, right? That's what we're all for.
I can understand why the Democratic Party put you in, because you are a hopeful optimist, and I think it's great. But I'm also a little bit of a populist. Like I get it when people get angry about big money controlling our democracy. That for my whole life has been one of my driving motivations, is that I really do feel like democracy would be healthier if it weren't so dependent, and I've been through it too. I mean, I raised money, a lot of money from developers even, and when I was the tree hugging guy, but I was also the pro housing guy. So they benefited from our, streamlining processes and a lot of things we did. They had reason, some of them, to support me. We've had a, love-hate relationship over this. I always thought,
but I played the game because I needed to, the fundraising game.
That was the worst part of being a politician.
But I really wished that there was a public finance system in place when I was running, and I could have played that game instead.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're not going to like hearing this. It's not to get too diverted, but there was a public financing bill on the floor of the Senate one year, and I helped lead the defeat of that bill on the floor.
Okay.
Not because I wanted more money in politics, because I think we would all agree I hated fundraising, but I was worried about some of the abuses that at least were in the details of that bill. So like the details of that really matter.
There are often loopholes, yeah.
There are loopholes. I was worried about it because there was this, groups were salivating at the idea of helping to raise seed money and then getting tax money for it. And I'm like, how is that any better than them just writing you a check for $150,000 or something? If they're the ones who are getting you all of the and there's no skin in their game, like they help you get a couple seed things, and then you get a couple $100,000 from taxpayers. Like they own you. Like how is that better? I'd rather you get 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, even though that's not great either. than to let these guys who were salivating and I remember they were sitting there. So I had an amendment to the bill that said no organization could be involved in any way with getting the seed money that would then lead to.
Okay, you had to get it from real people.
You had to get it. You had to do it yourself.
Which I agree with that. I mean,
they went crazy when that amendment went.
Well, there's always a threshold. You have to show that you have real support if you're going to get any match,
right.
And that should be the way it is.
That's what I thought too.
And I always remind people that Larry Hogan was running against the Maryland Democratic machine, right? That's what he said. That's what the way people saw it, and it was true that the Maryland Democratic Party and the Maryland, Democrats had the money because they had the majority, and so. He kind of went around it by using the public finance system, and so it is a tool for the little guy against the power structure, and that's what I like about it.
It's interesting. There's so little we can do at the state level about this. So let me just, before we get off, and I know we're short on time, and again I just want to say thank you. I would love to do this again and really go through a lot of these issues on housing and voting rights and affordability and all the rest, because honestly, my opinion is. That's the most important stuff, right? These are the things that really matter, like the personalities and so forth. They're interesting and make for good media, but this is where the rubber meets the road. It's what I miss the most out of politics.
You got it. Like here, I'm going to try to sell you here on the party again.
That's your job now.
As a Democrat in the Maryland General Assembly, I'm sure you were part of some pretty intense policy discussions about these issues, right? These affordability issues, even they're not new. And did you not feel as though the Democrats were there to really figure out the best policy on those, and that the Republicans had a tendency to say that's not the role of government, we shouldn't be involved?
You're not going to like my answer. Okay. I did not feel that way. I felt, and I was the chairman of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, so what Will Smith is now. I found my members, the Republican members of my committee were some of the best members I ever served with. Like, even when I'll give you a story. Bob Castley, the county executive for Harford County, he and I disagreed on a range of issues. Particularly, he was a defense attorney. I was a plaintiff's attorney in our private lives. So we really went at it on those issues. I mean, most of the things that come into the reality is, let me just start again. The reality is most of the issues that come into the General Assembly aren't partisan. They're just like, you're trying to figure out, particularly in our committee, drunk driving, domestic violence, civil justice, criminal justice, justice reform and housing and things like that. You're just trying to figure out how to solve problems. Like, what's the best way to stop people from committing domestic violence? Like, are our laws working? Are they not working? Trying to keep people from being murdered. Like, you had people that were more Second Amendment-y, less Second Amendment-y, but everybody wants the same goal and just have, present their own data to get to that role. I found my story about Bob Castley is there was a bill, I don't even remember what it was, but he hated it and I loved it. And I was the chairman and that bill was coming out. And
he kicked your ass.
And he knew it. And he came in, and it was a really complex, deep bill. And he came in and he had been fighting and he was making really good points, and I tried to do the best I could with the piece of legislation. He came in the day before our vote. He's like, Bobby, he goes, can I just talk to you for a second? I said, sure. Go to my back room. And he goes, and he pulled out the bill from his jacket, and there was red marks all over this thing. I mean, he had gone through meticulously to go through this piece of legislation. He goes, Bobby, he goes, I know you're going to pass this piece of shit, but and I hate it, and I'm voting no. But if you're just going to put this out there, I can't stand it. It sounds like a second grader wrote it. You have to change this and this comma and this and this word and this word. I mean, he had meticulously gone through it to make it better. Okay. And that's how I found those guys.
I'm not suggesting that Republicans aren't smart.
No, I know you're not. I was just you asked me like how I found them. Yeah. And quite frankly, I found the members that I work with on both sides of the aisle, I found them like everybody was committed to public policy. We had a rule I'll just end with this one. We had a rule on my committee. I said to them when I was chairman, I'm like, look, we're going to fight hard. These are really intense issues we deal with here, but we are in a foxhole together. And the last thing that's important is whether you're a D or an R. Yeah. So my one rule for this committee is you don't talk about each other badly in the public. If you do, I will kill any bill that you have goes in my drawer if you say something bad about anybody on this committee. Yeah. You want to talk about other people in the committee, great, go for it.
It's a little secret that Democrats and Republicans actually get along in a lot of these legislative bodies. And I'm going to be at Mako next week. I don't know when this comes out, it may have been already passed, but I'm going to be at MACO next week. And Maryland Association of Counties is one of my favorite organizations because it is so bipartisan. But the people at the table, I'm on the board of it, the people who are at the table from the red counties are county commissioners and some county executives they want to govern and they have to do budgets. And they get really sort of disgusted, many of them by the sort of more MAGA agenda that is about social issues. And they really just want to do good government. And it's really refreshing. And it's we don't agree necessarily on all the things that government does or how much it does some various things. There's disagreements for sure, but it's interesting that some of them, I think, probably if they were in a blue jurisdiction and they wanted to do public service, they would do it as a Democrat because that's how you can get elected. That's
the way government should. That's why it's so upsetting to me to watch our national figures from both parties. And this is Johnny, as I told you, Johnny O, who's a good friend of mine. Although he would admit that. Well, I got him to admit for the first time that I was the best basketball player in the General Assembly and not him. But he came here and talked about what's going on in Washington. And I'm like, he was a county executive and he made the rule. He was working with Democrats and Republicans and getting things done the way you do in Anne Arundel County. I'm like, how do you like Congress? He says, I hate it. He goes, they just fight and talk trash about each other constantly and all for that next D or R in that next number so you can get just a little bit more power. He goes, I hate he just can't stand it. And I said, but that's the way it is. As I said, Jamie Raskin went down there. Jamie was the most bipartisan guy I knew in the General Assembly. I mean, you never heard him say a bad word about anybody. I went to go spend a day with him in Washington and literally interview after interview after MAGA, Trump, the Republicans. It was just interview. I said, what do you do here? Do you actually create anything? Is there any laws that you make? Is there anything positive? And the answer was no. And
well, I think Maryland
they're doing us a disservice.
Maryland governs pretty well. And one of the things about this MACO group is interesting is, the governor, whoever it is, Hogan in my first term, and then Westmore walks in and meets with the board of MACO. One of the things this governor has been everywhere so much, and he's really gone out into the rural parts of the state, and he's got these real supporters that are Republican electeds. They may not say it publicly, but just sort of an appreciation of the public service in the agencies. The people they work for the governor, but they do whether it's agriculture or commerce or whatever it is, and there's been an appreciation, I think. I mean, I don't know. We talked about the governor a little bit because he does sort of define what the sense of a Democrat it is in Maryland. He's sort of found an interesting path, I think, which is very much pro-growth, which some people would say is, well, that's supposed to be a Republican. You're pro-business, you're pro-growth. And, he actually worked on Wall Street. He doesn't talk about that as much. But then he also worked at the Robin Hood Foundation. And when he says leave no one behind, he's absolutely lifelong committed to that as well. And to me, it's and I think that the public really is disgusted by the fact that we still have so much poverty in this country and the impacts of that. And so I think it's a healthy approach. We are a capitalist country. Our economy is private business. And so having a really aggressive approach where they're actually delivering, I think 18,000 new jobs in the first 6 months of the year. We are way above the national average, and we were so far below for a while, even though we were talking the right game in Maryland. Growing the size of government, 70% over those last 8 years. And now he's the fiscal disciplinarian right now who's cutting government, and it's tough. Some of us don't like what he cuts, but actually bringing down that structural deficit is, it's a real challenge. While at the same time saying, but we have to grow the economy.
It's a challenge for him too.
Very bipartisan sounding approach.
Sure. I started with Paris Glendenning and then Ehrlich, O'Malley, Larry, and now and Westmore. I never served under Westmore. I found that all of them, for the most part, wanted to work mostly bipartisan. It was not. I always found the Maryland General Assembly to be kind of like a little bastion of bipartisanship and nonpartisanship. I'm not sure that that's. not sure that how much longer that's going to hold from seeing some of the speeches after this redistricting. I hope it goes back to that. I mean, Cass Taylor, Mike Miller, Mike Bush. I mean, these are titans that like they demanded that we all work together. Like our motto was that we weren't Washington, D.C. I always
You can't
found
get away
that
with that anymore.
I'm not sure you can get away with that anymore. I mean, it's sad because I always bragged about that when I went to NCSL and some of these other. I said, I'm from Maryland and we do things together. Like there are different parties, but that doesn't mean anything. Like people, good ideas are good ideas, bad ideas are bad ideas. I thought Governor Hogan was.
My solution in Anne Arundel as county executive is community engagement. And the staff has always been, that's difficult. It's uncomfortable when you have 7 budget town halls and people are yelling at you about all the things that you should have funded and you didn't fund and that they want funded, complaining about potholes and all these things and doing it in a public arena. But in the long run, to me, in this era of social media where everything's transparent anyway, just be transparent, encourage the engagement, encourage the organizing. And the more people engage, then the more they understand that there's compromises that have to be made. And it surfaced well in Anne Arundel. I think I would like to see more of that at every level of government. And that's why I think parties are important to increase the engagement. And that is to me the role of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party is my job to engage people. And that's also rebuilding trust. You know, that there's actually good in government. And there's been a narrative that is government is the source of all of our problems. Right. I think Ronald Reagan said that. And it in the long run, it hurts when people think that.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
I do. I agree with that. I mean, I have one final question for you because I know I see your staff giving me the evil eye from the corner. This is more of a personal question for you. I guess you've had a great career where, and I think people who are listening to this will see like somebody who's in government where the party really doesn't matter because you're just fixing problems at the county level. When you, as county executive, it doesn't matter.
Well, the party does it does
it
matter
matters
for what it does, but
sure. But like in terms of the job, it's like you're just trying to help, right? You're
right.
trying to fix problems, decide on growth and all the rest. And as chairman of the party, your term, I assume, I don't know how long your term goes for, but I guess what's personally next for Steuart Pittman? Are you going into retirement and going to go work with horses again, or is it, or what's the next act?
So I do this weekly letter that I write that a lot of people read. I started doing the second term, and I love to write. And I said in the last one, I was talking about all the people who are leaving their jobs when the boss leaves was the title. And then, I'll be leaving my job. And everybody's asking me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And my answer, and this is actually true, probably, I'm not promising, but probably, because I love to write, is a tell-all book. So watch what you do and watch what you say, because you might be in it.
Well, I'll look forward to reading it. And I'd love to have you back here again, as when there are developing issues, either for the party or for Anne Arundel County.
Well, good luck with this podcast series.
Thank you. It's I hope we can, the goal of this is to dig in and to try to look at it from both sides. Because like I said, I've been a lifelong Democrat, but I'm teetering right now. And I mean, it feels good to talk to people like you who are so hopeful and optimistic and so focused on issues that we all care about, right?
They have to be solved.
We care about, everybody cares about those types of issues and your perspective on them. I wish that some of our national figures acted more responsibly, like you and Governor Moore and others. It just, I guess it's a wait and see, and we'll see how November turns out.
We
and
shall see.
maybe after the elections, we'll have you back here and we'll talk about what comes next. So,
okay, sounds good.
For Across the Aisle, first of all, thank you for being here. It's been an honor to have you. Steuart Pittman, County Executive, Anne Arundel County, and Chairman of the Democratic Party. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bobby.
All right.